Hello and welcome to this 30th session in our marathon study of Maitreya Asanga's text, the Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra, also known as the Ratnakotra Vibhanga, or Maitreya on Buddha nature. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And let's start in the very best way by spending a moment of beauty. Beauty with our Buddha nature, with our bodhicitta, motivation, remembering why we are doing these teachings, trying to learn about who we really are, who everyone really is, and how this perception of ours really works in its deluded ways and its awakened ways. So we do that, of course, with our prayers, which express so much, such wonderful words, very concentrated words. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on until we reach the very heart of enlightenment. Through our practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every being be well. May they live long and be healthy, be well provided for, have good friends, find respect. May they live in places of peace, plenty. Most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for those good circumstances to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural, sacred well-being totally beyond suffering and attain the great equanimity that's free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata shame shamavati shameta shatru kuri marajite karota keori te jowati oloyane peshudane male malapana ye kukure kaka grase grasana omuki paramuki amuki shamedavani sawa graha bandhanane negritva Sawa bara prawadina vimukta marabhasha savitva buddha mudra anudgatita savamare putsarita parishuddha bhiga shantu savamara kamani. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our heads on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain us that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. So excuse me a moment, I've got a last minute request for today's link. Be with you in a second. There we go. So I'll spare you, because we had it last week, the zoom into where we are, which text we're studying, where we are in the text, which bit of that, and we'll carry straight on from last week. Just to remind you in general of how can you say, the overall context. We're now looking at Nirmanakaya. We're looking at the kayas of the Buddha, and we studied Svabhavikakaya and Sambhogakaya. Now we're looking at Nirmanakaya, which is the way Buddha manifests in the 6 realms to beings like ourselves who are in the human realm. Put the other way round, is the way beings like us in the human realms, what we can and can't perceive of Buddha. So here what we can perceive. And there are at least 4 types of Nirmanakaya. And here in this text, we're looking at only one of them, which is called Supreme Nirmanakaya. And that is when Buddha manifests in the world to turn the wheel of Dharma for the first time. And so having done that, then the Buddha's teachings last for thousands of years. And what comes afterwards with the various Buddha's disciples and as the centuries go by, great Buddhist masters, isn't bringing anything new. Or it shouldn't be bringing anything new. But instead, developing, unpacking, explaining, commenting on the teachings the Buddha already gave. And those teachings, they're like a seed planted in the ground, that then becomes a wonderful, beautiful tree with more and more branches. So as the centuries went by and Buddhists were thinking about what in Tibetan we call Sanjiki Gompa. Gompa means intention. What was the Buddha really meaning? What was he trying to tell us? Then we get not new teachings, but we get more and more clear, insightful commentaries on the Buddha's teaching, and especially the ones within Mahayana. So here we're looking at the Supreme Nirmanakaya, the Buddha who comes to a world to set the wheel of Dharma in motion. And in particular, we're looking at 12 aspects of the Buddha's life which help the Dharma teachings to be respected and to remain for many centuries. So these are called the 12 deeds of the Buddha. And in the Mahayana teachings, this isn't just happening in our world that the Buddha is showing the life of the Buddha. It's happening in many hundreds, in fact many thousands, almost 1 billion other worlds in which the Buddha has disciples. And so the same thing is happening. Last week we looked at the first deed, which is leaving Tushita paradise in order, just let me check this. Good. So, it's happening in many, many, many other worlds, the same thing. Shakyamuni's disciples from his 3 cosmic eons of being a bodhisattva and teaching, they are gathering in those worlds and they're experiencing the Buddha and they're experiencing these 12 important things. But here, of course, we're more concerned with our world and the life of the Buddha. As I explained last week, Buddha himself gave us very little information about his own life. And most of the details of the life of the Buddha and his birth and enlightenment and so on, they come from the agamas, which start, thus have I heard, which means that it's second-hand. A lot of the details come from what Ananda, the Buddha's cousin and disciple and attendant, had heard, and he said he was repeating what the Buddha had told him. So a lot of these disciples are in the Agamas, they're in the Theravada and the Mahayana texts. And as the centuries went by, the stories, so they took on lots of details. And so we can get some lives of the Buddha. I think Thich Nhat Hanh's, what is it, Old Path, White Clouds, or something like that. Very beautiful, a sort of story that draws on lots and lots of the legends of the life of the Buddha. For those of you who registered for this course, because that's the only ones I have emails for to update, I sent you a PDF of Dr. Thomas's Life of the Buddha, which is a very good, it's excellent bit of research, which tells us for each stage of the life of the Buddha where the information comes from, which sutras, and which is more legend, which is more the Buddha's own story. But here, what we have in this text is, how can you say, it's what we need to know. It's the Bodhisattva version, and so it talks about the 12 key points without lots of embroidery. When he was born, we don't get all the legends of what happened and so on. It just says he was born in a very extraordinary way, full stop. How extraordinary, what happened, virgin births and all that kind of thing. Read Thomas, and it's very, very interesting. But here we're looking at these 12 key points. Last week we saw the introductory verse, which says from the highest realm, which is called the Akanistha heaven, that's where Buddha Shakyamuni actually attained enlightenment. When we go through the 10 bodhisattva levels, we see it's so hard for us to imagine. When you reach bodhisattva level 1, your mind, if we can call it that, is in roughly 100 different places at the same time, experiencing 100 different Pure Lands and teaching. You've got already 100 people or more depending on you for teachings and so on. It's not one person in one place. That's our reality. When you reach first bodhisattva level, that kind of one person reincarnated in one place reality is finished. We have a very wide, broad, liberated mind that's having what for us would be multiple experiences, 100 on the first bodhisattva level at the same time. It's very hard to imagine. Imagine you've got 2 Dharma teachers, at the same time teaching. We couldn't follow. You'd either be listening to the one, imagine in the same room, you've got 2 Rinpoches teaching. How could you follow both at the same time? You couldn't, even 2. So then how could you purely receive the teaching and the blessing from 100 at the same time? We don't have a mind that can do that yet. But as we draw closer to Buddha mind and get to first bodhisattva level, that's how it is. It's the wonder of giving up ego. It's a prison. It keeps us in a tiny, tiny place when our mind is limitless. So as we start to approach that, it expands. Second bodhisattva level, it's roughly 1,000. With each level, then the multiplicity of experience. So by the time you get to the 10th level, there are emanations you have in so many different places, helping beings. And so it says from the highest place, one of those emanations is in Tushita, and that emanation sees the time is right here on earth. And it sees that in 5 different ways, which we looked at last time. The time's right, the place is right, the mother's right, the the status of the family he'll be born into is right. All the conditions are there. And so because the time is right, then Buddha leaves. Well, he doesn't actually. It says his blessings, his mind stays in Tushita, and all the rest that happens on earth is an illusion. Because everything that happens here on earth is an illusion. Now, that's okay for us in Mahayana teachings. Everything we are studying is presented in those terms, 6 paramitas. Everything is like a dream, like an illusion, and everything is mind. There's no mind and matter. There's no solid material universe other than us. What we experience as the universe is our mind's dreamlike, subjective experience. Very important to understand that when we look through the life of the Buddha, because if you've got a materialistic mind, then you say, oh, that can't happen. When you look at like when the Buddha was born, gynecologists, midwives, and so on will say, no, that's not possible. Excuse me. No. When we get in the next chapter to the qualities of the Buddha, it says he has 40 teeth. My mother-in-law was a dentist, and no way, because they are used to humans and human reality. That doesn't happen. So this is extraordinary, and we need to understand the difference between that happened or that's what people experienced as happening. That's what the people who were with the Buddha's mother when she gave birth, that's how they experienced. They had what we would call a visionary experience. They had an extraordinary experience. If you've never had those, it's so hard to understand. If you've had them, it's very easy. You understand just how everything is subjective illusion. And some of them can be very, very wonderful. You can call it group hallucinations. We know if that makes it easier for you, you're more comfortable as a materialist to say, oh, they had a group hallucination. Then do it if you're more comfortable, if it helps you to understand. But it's much more profound than that. The whole thing, every moment, is like a dream, it's like a mirage, it's like an illusion. When we're looking at the extraordinary things that happened back in India almost 2,600 years ago, and it was extraordinary, it wasn't ordinary. And so we see all of that as being like a theatre put on from the Tushita paradise by the mind of Buddha in this world so that the Dharma teachings lasted. And fortunately, in this world we do have quite enlightened beings, and people, when they're with them, they have this thing of seeing them not like other people see them. Sort of stuff we see in Tonkas, see them as bodies of light, to see them with these wonderful halos of light, or in a wrathful manifestation, surrounded by blazing fire. This happens. So, it's not just in the past, and the legend says, if your mind is awakened, especially through meditation experience, and these things happen now, and then we understand it's so amazing. We see this huge wave of pure blessing that swept across our planet for 80 years, that we call the life of the Buddha, and how each person experienced it in their own way. So now we're looking at the details, and last week we did the first deed of the Buddha, which is leaving the Tushita paradise to come to this world. So then we're on page 222 of the book, and verse 221. So it says, Buddha descends from the realm of great joy, that's Tushita, enters the royal womb, and is nobly born in Jambudvipa. Jambudvipa, which means rose apple land, is the name for India, the continent of India. Perfectly skilled in each science and art. So we have a couple of the deeds contained in that verse. So deed 1 leaves Tushita. Deed 2 enters the mother's womb. And so his mother, there's stories from past life, was somebody with a profound karmic connection with Bodhisattva Shakyamuni, who had made prayers, made requests to be his mother at the time when he would manifest enlightenment or become enlightened. So when we look more at the details, it's said the mother had so many special qualities. I forget if it's 12 or 24, but there are this list of why this was the right person to be his mother. So in the commentary it says his teachings would later point out the limitations of worldly wealth, status and achievement. And so it would be very important that worldly goals be removed from their pedestal and given their proper place by someone who'd known them to the full. So he was born into a royal family. When you look at Thomas, you can see that how big a kingdom, how big a king his father was, is debatable. For Tibetans, it was a big kingdom, and his father was very rich and powerful. So his father was Suddhodana, and his mother was Mahamaya. It's a beautiful name. Maya means illusion. Mahamaya means great illusion. So the Buddha is born out of great illusion is a wonderful bit of wordplay. Anyway, she was the right one. And when he entered the room, then the mother dreamt of a white, six-tusked elephant entering her womb. And she's dreamt of her own womb as being the most beautiful palace. So she had this dream of an exquisite sort of Deva realm palace with a white elephant wandering into it. It's a nice dream. Not an ordinary elephant, pure white, light, with 6 tusks. I don't know whether it makes us think of the 6 paramitas or not, but anyway. And she heard celestial music, and there were many other signs. So this leaving Tushita is number 1. Entering the mother's womb is number 2. So that you'll see in Thomas, there are various stories about how from then until his birth, she didn't want sex with her husband, basically. She took vows she wanted, or she knew she should live in a state of purity. The third deed is to actually be born. Again, there are many stories, legends. There's the Ananda's version, Thus Have I Heard, about how he was born. The story basically is that she left her own kingdom to go back to, she left her present kingdom because she was the wife of the king, to go back to her birth kingdom because she was a princess from a kingdom further to the north, which is in present-day Nepal. So she was on her way to her birth kingdom, and then she felt a bit woozy at one point, and she was in a very beautiful sort of bit of woodland, And she wanted to go there because it looked so pretty. And then when she was there, she felt a bit woozy. She held the branch of a tree and gave birth painlessly. So the details of that you can look up in Thomas and see the different versions. To those present, it wasn't a normal sort of childbirth with the pain and the pushing and all the rest of it. They saw her just hold the tree, and people experience, what they experience as a group, was a beam of light coming from her right side, and with Buddha, and then they hear the baby Buddha declaring that he is the greatest being on earth, and they see him take steps in each of the four principal directions. So, and with each step, then a lotus flower appears under his feet. So this is how they experienced. And of course, the meaning of that, the 5 Buddha families, the 5 directions, them experiencing in their own individual consciousness that they are witnessing the birth of the greatest, purest being on earth is what happened. So, where are we? I think I mentioned it, but let's mention it again. With the life of the Buddha, although the Theravada tradition, which is all we have left of the Shravaka level of teachings that developed in India, although they have these extraordinary stories of the Buddha's birth, they tend to emphasize the ordinariness. So this story of the beam of light and the mother having no pain and so on is in the Theravada system. But for them, it's important to show the Buddha as a human who goes through growing up with things happening and who in the end leaves the palace and so on, that story, leading up to an enlightenment at the age of 35. They like the human story because they think that gives people hope. If Buddha could do it, I can do it. It's kind of, I'm human, he was human, we can do it. The Mahayana story, which for us is closer to the truth, is all of this, is a kind of demonstration to help the teachings. And so we have a much more mind, everything is mind. This is the illusion that took place on a group, on a national level, and for the Buddhist family and so on. So we keep that difference in mind. Now last week I mentioned that we've made the Taisitupa made a homage to these 12 deeds of the Buddha. I've not managed to find anywhere an audio copy of that. I've got it somewhere on an audio cassette, whether that's in Scotland or here, I've no idea, but I've not found it. So I don't know if it's of interest. We can take a vote on it, but in this session, if you like. But with the tune we made at the time, once we did it as a group, singing, some people liked it, but a lot of people said, oh, it's like going back to church. They had the feeling of singing a hymn in church, and a lot of people didn't have, how can you say, the best associations with that time of their life. And they thought, oh no, I've got out of all of that. I've got to Buddhism with its common sense, and it's all this is your mind, and that's your mind, and everything. And then here we are, all as a community singing, great is the Buddha. And so it had a mixed reaction, let's say, with the original tune. So So for the first deed, leaving the Tushita paradise, the original tune was something like this. Because you could hear the saddening cries of suffering and the calling of your children from a ripening world, to fulfill the hopes and wishes of those beings, to bring them to happiness and to show virtue's worth, with limitless love and fearless resolution, from the highest of pure lands you emanated to earth. Great is the Buddha. So the tune was something like that, and once you're in a group, people add their own harmonies, fifths and all the rest of it. So in 2016, I made a different version, and I thought, people didn't like the sort of churchy, hymny sound. So I made a version that's like a fanfare, a royal fanfare, trumpets when the king arrives. So I'm going to, what's it doing here? I've got what they call in Windows a taskbar, and when Zoom's playing, it won't disappear, so it gets in the way of all the controls. So never mind. So we're going to share this version, which is a bit high-pitched. If you've got the idea that it's like trumpets, you'll understand why. Can you wave a hand if you can see something? Yeah, okay. Here we go. This taskbar's driving me bananas. Can't get rid of it. Good. Okay. I can't reach the controls. Oh dear. Okay, let's try this. Is it working? Because you could hear their saddening cries of suffering and the calling of your children from a ripening world, to fulfill the hopes and wishes of those beings, to bring them to happiness and to show virtue's worth, with limitless love and fearless resolution, from the highest of pure lands you emanated to earth. Great is the Buddha. Seeing Jambudvip, our planet, in extraordinary vision, a mother who could bear you, a father, a great king, with courage that was born of the deepest conviction in the benefit that your life as a human would bring. Amidst miracles and wonders, you entered the womb of noble Mahamaya, King Suddhodana's queen. Great is the outside in the grove of Lumbini, with the special signs of a Buddha, your body was marked. You took 7 steps in each of the principal directions, and at each step a lotus flower sprang up from the earth. Then the Lord of Gods came to make his humble prostration, as you declared yourself most high in the whole universe. Great is the Buddha, understanding with precision the qualities of all things, the play of phenomena with insight. Good. Okay, so that was it. I don't know if you want to hear more verses as we go along, or if we just stop there. Do we just stop there? Okay. It's nice. It kind of sums it up in a nice way. It's a very beautiful thing Taisitupa did. So there we've got 3 of the deeds, and we were going into number 4 as well. So it says what the people there experienced is, then they weren't just them. Then their minds opened up and they saw the Deva realms and the demigods realms and the realms of dragons and all sorts of other nagas and beings. All of a sudden it was a very sort of vast cosmic experience, and all of these other beings are paying homage to this baby child that's, it's like a moment where you can't breathe. You're in apnea because the most wonderful being for many thousands, tens of thousands of years is being born, and you're there witnessing it. Is kind of, just the thought of it makes me kind of stop breathing. And to have actually been there and then to have this vast, vast experience of other beings and other realms, or seeing what's happening there on earth, is just something absolutely extraordinary. So there's one thing that happens here that in a way we come back to later in the deeds. One of the deeds is teaching Dharma, which is of course very important for us. We'll leave that. It's just all the gods came to worship, I suppose, show respect. Number 4 is now the Buddha's growing up, and he becomes everything people dream about. He's handsome. He is bright. As he starts to study, he just learns so quickly. He goes beyond his teachers. He asks questions they can't answer. He learns some languages. He learns astronomy and mathematics, the sciences they had at the time. And then, not just that, he's really good at sports. I mean, all you have to think of are these, I don't know, I don't see them, but I know in the UK there used to be a magazine called Hello, and it's all about kings, queens, royal families, sports stars, movie stars, Hollywood personalities, who's dating who, what the latest one did. If you look at what people, lots of people, are interested in, beauty, physical prowess in sports, mental prowess, great minds, great scientists, great thinkers, great philosophers, and then status, somebody who's got everything. It's quite interesting. There's the pro-royalty and the anti-royalty factions on social media. Some people can't stand them. Other people think it's wonderful, that we've got these examples of people who are so rich and can do what they want, basically, financially. Anyway, all those things that people respect and in their own lives aspire to. Beauty, in our own way, each person. Like me, before I come on to this session in the morning, I check my hair, I make sure I'm not looking a wreck. It's and we all do that. We want to be as beautiful as we can be, as good looking, make our homes look nice, and then fitness and so on. So later on, the Buddha is going to teach that sensorial pleasure and worldly accomplishments aren't it. Now, imagine he's a loser, right? Not what he grew up to be. Imagine he's ugly, he can't kick a football, he can't do anything. Imagine he's not bright, and all these things. If he's a loser who says, no, that's not what the ultimate spiritual, people would say, yeah, he would say that, wouldn't he? Because he's a loser. But when somebody's had everything, done everything, more than everybody else, and they say, but this isn't it, you can believe him. There he was a prince. Here we see him growing up and being bright, being beautiful, being a wonder in his own kingdom. People looking up to him and saying, gosh, this is a super being. And I forgot something earlier, so I need to go back to that. But so this point 4, let's finish it first. He exhibited matchless prowess in every field of learning. His beautiful athletic body surpassed all others in sport. He mastered 60 different dialects, and in art and archery and all these things. Then he was the best. He was the best in the world. So that's point 4. Let's go back to his birth. So in the details of his birth, 7 days after his birth mother dies. Mahamaya dies. And so then he has a new wet nurse mother who becomes his life mother, adoptive mother, through the rest of his life, and who becomes one of the first people to become a nun when he's Buddha. So that wasn't his birth mother, that's his life mother. And also when he was born, because people had had these extraordinary experiences at the time of his birth, his father called in seers, and one of the seers, sages that he called in, looked at the special marks on on the body of the baby, and he started crying. And they were a bit panicked at first, thinking he'd seen bad signs. And they said, what is it? And the seer said, this child will either become a universal monarch and rule a great empire, or he'll become a Buddha. They said, well, then why are you crying? And he said, because when he becomes a Buddha, I'll have died, and I won't have the chance to go and receive teachings. So what we actually see is that seer told his disciples, when he becomes Buddha, you should go. And they become some of the Buddha's first disciples. So anyway, this seeing the special signs already on the baby and making predictions to the father that either he'll become a great monarch or he'll become a great religious figure is very important, because he was his father's only son and heir. And of course, for kings, having an heir to carry on is very, very important. So his father wanted him to be a great king rather than be a great religious figure. So then the next one, point 5, we're on page 224, verse 222, delighting in his royal consort's company, then renouncing, practicing the path of hardship and difficulty, going to the place called enlightenment's very heart, which these days we call Bodhgaya, and he vanquishes the host of evil. So we have in that one verse, remember this is the original text, it's highlighting the key points. The first, delighting in his royal consort's company. Now this is going to be, it's going to be upsetting for some people. He was a prince, and he had 3 wives, one principal wife, Yasodhara, and 2 other, he had 3 main wives, and I don't know what you call it, a harem, many other consorts. See, his father wanted him to, how do you say, be a happy prince and then become a happy king. And he wanted grandchildren as well. So marriages were arranged. Again, when you look into the details, you find stories of past lives and people who made deep promises or had visions that in the future they could be the consort of Buddha when he became Buddha. So the point of this, very, very interesting point, it's not explored a lot. Once you start thinking about it, it gets very curious, is, what do lots of humans dream about? A partner. They call it a partner these days. When I was a boy, as we old people say, partners were just a word used in business. If you said my partner, it means you were in business together, and you had a company. Holmes and Jenkins, solicitors. And otherwise you had wives or girlfriends or lovers, partners these days. So anyway, people dream of an ideal partner. People fantasize. People have sexual fantasies, and they have companionship fantasies. And so anyway, he had 3 beautiful wives. I suppose beauty is one of the main things. And so again, we go back to Hello magazine. Prince Siddhartha marries another one, has 2, now he's got 3 wives. And, this incredibly handsome man has now got the beautiful queens. And people will think, God, lucky so-and-so, like he's got the lot. He's, doesn't just get one, he gets so many. But then if you look from the time he was marriageable, in the times of those days, which would have been a teenager, goodness knows what, 15, 16, 17, he had these 3 arranged marriages with people of, his queens were of noble descent. From then, mid-teens, until the age of 29, he did not produce one child. So whether he wasn't interested, whether, well, that's left to our imagination, but that's extraordinary. But he had these various companions, wives, which, people dream of. It's one of life's dreams. So that then afterwards he could say, no, it's not that either. He had the royalty, he had the brains, he had the physical prowess as a sports person, he had dreamlike marriages, and apparently it became famous not just in his own kingdom, but in the neighboring kingdoms. So when he says there's more than that, people could believe it. He could really believe it, because nobody had so much going for him as he did. So that having the companions is point 5. And then renouncing worldliness is point 6. That's what we need to know. The details of that you'll find in the stories about how he was kept in a world where everything was beautiful for him. He wasn't allowed out much. His father tried to make the palace life everything he needed and removed all signs of anything that could stimulate him to leave the world. But then it says in some of the legends, some of the stories, that when Buddha was born, at the same time, various other beings were born into this world. And one of them was Channa, his chariot driver, his chauffeur these days. So his chariot driver, his chauffeur, was born into the world. And on 4 different trips out of the palace, then he sees birth, aging, sickness, and death, and he sees a holy man. And each time, because he's been kept away from these things, then he asks Channa, he says, what's that? And he says, that's aging, that's sickness, that's death. When they see a funeral procession and things. And then when he sees a holy man, that's it. That's a holy person who's left the world to find the truth. And so because of, in the regular story of a prince growing up, then tick, 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 thinking about things, having experiencing, that makes a lot of sense to people. In the Bodhisattva version, this is all a demonstration of leaving the world to go beyond it. So he gets his chariot driver in the story to bring him his horse called Kantaka. His horse is very, very fond of him because he's a great bodhisattva. He has a loving heart. He has an amazing bond with the horse. He rides the horse, and his chauffeur, his chariot driver, accompanies him. And then he gets far enough away from the palace. And then it says he cuts off his hair, which is why Buddhists shave their heads these days. Now, hair in those days was a sign of social status. And to have your hair piled up on top in a certain way with jewels set on it meant you are a prince. Not everyone. You couldn't just have a hairdo like that if you fancied it. You'd be put in prison. Your hair status showed who you were. So him taking his sword, cutting off his own hair, was a sign of leaving. And then he said to his chariot driver, you go back now. And he says to the horse, you go back now with Channa. And the horse doesn't want to leave him. And his chariot driver doesn't want to leave him. But he says, no, you must go back. I must go on alone. So that's some of the details. There are so many more of his life. I didn't include when he was young and growing up. He had deep natural meditation experiences underneath a tree when we look at the Buddha's life, there are different trees. His life, his enlightenment was under a Bodhi tree, sal tree, and then under a different type of tree. He has meditation experience there. Trees crop up quite a bit. It's very nice in one Dharma center in South Africa, in BRC. There they planted a garden with all the trees that appear in the Buddha's life story. It's quite nice to go there. Anyway, he renounces the world. That's the main point. All the details are in Thomas. And so then the next thing is he practiced meditation and asceticism. So he practices meditation and asceticism. Now, and he does that for 6 years in the story, in various places. Sometimes people think he sat under one tree for 6 years. The story is actually not that. That tree he sits under, a Bodhgaya for enlightenment, he only sits underneath that for 1 day before his enlightenment. He goes there. So he wanders with some other people. So this part of his life, when you go into the details, first he sets the example of seeking out teachers. And he goes first to one of the most famous gurus of the day, and he learns shamatha meditation. He learns the particular shamatha practices that teacher has, and he masters them, and he reaches the same level as the teacher. And then he says, what's next? And there isn't a next. The teacher hasn't anything more. So he gets that teacher's permission to leave. This is all very wonderful example setting. Going out to find a teacher to learn. And then when that teacher can't teach him anymore, he's sent, or he goes to another teacher with that first teacher's permission. And he learns what he has to teach. And then through the method, he gets more results than the teacher himself has. And then he says again, what's next? And the teacher doesn't have a next. And these were the two most famous meditation teachers of the time. There wasn't another one to go to. So then he sets off on his own. He'd exhausted the gurus of the time, not exhausted, tired. He'd kind of run out of gurus to go to. So then he needs to seek on his own. And he has 5 companions. And they practice asceticism together. And asceticism is the key thing here. They sit in the hottest Indian sun to be able to bear the heat. They go to places in the mountains where it's cold to be able to withstand the cold. They fast, so they're not eating until their body's bones. So through all the different ascetic things one can do, of rejecting the world and totally concentrating the mind on meditation. The idea is you're not attached to anything. And so he did that for 6 years. The whole point being, nobody, I'm sorry, these days it sounds like Trump, but nobody had done more asceticism than him. Nobody in the whole history of ascetics had done more asceticism, had done more heat, more cold, more starvation, more putting up with physical pain than him. So that afterwards, he could say, that's not it afterwards. He'd gone from the one extreme of sensorial comfort, what these days we call the art of living life to the full, living with the senses, and then rejecting all the senses and asceticism. He'd gone to the extreme of that. So afterwards, when he says that's not it, who could argue? Nobody had done more than he'd done. That was the whole point of this lifelong hallucination that is created on earth, this wave of experience, in order to establish the teachings. So that's practice meditation and asceticism. So it says a lot of that occurred near the river Nirmanakaya. Now, when we come to, that went on for 6 years. How did it end? Then there's the whole story of a girl who gives him food. So when you see the Buddha statues of him at the time, they're the ones where you see all the bones, and he's absolutely skeletal thin because he's not been eating. Then there are various versions of the story. From one version of a girl who thinks that there's the tree he's sitting under has a spirit in it, and she's been making offerings to the spirit, so she comes with the offerings and finds the Buddha there, Shakyamuni there, and offers it to him thinking he's the tree spirit. There's that kind of a story. To the story of in a past life, somebody had made the promise to do what she did. So in the Tibetan version, it's somebody with a herd of cows, 100 cows. She milks the 100 cows and gives the milk of 100 cows to 10 of the best cows to drink. And then the milk of the 10 best cows she gives to the very best cow to make super milk. And then she mixes that with honey and rice and takes that as an offering and gives it to Shakyamuni, Siddhartha, and he drinks it. At which point his 5 companions think, they're all into asceticism, more than anybody ever did asceticism, and there he is taking superfood, and they leave. Once they've left, through that one taking of superfood, it says his whole body goes from skeletal to the way it's depicted these days, perfect. All the muscles, all the flesh is there, the beauty is there, and this marvelous halo of light around it comes back, which hadn't been there during the ascetic period. And then in the story, once he's emptied the bowl of food, then he puts the bowl in the river Nirmanakaya, and he says, if I'm to be enlightened in this time, this bowl will float upstream, not with the current, and the bowl floats upstream. And he knows, he shows this is a sign of his enlightenment. So that's how it comes to an end. Then deed 8 is going to what in the text is called Vajrasana, the Vajra seat. And it's said to be the place where all those who reach enlightenment in our world will go to demonstrate full Buddhahood. These days we call it Bodhgaya. And it's seen as sort of the energetic center for this whole planet. So going there, so the story goes that he realized the time has come to show enlightenment. So he goes to the Bodhi tree. On the way there, he meets a boy who's gathering kusha grass, and the boy sees the radiance of the Buddha's body, and he offers the bundle of kusha grass as a cushion. And Buddha takes that, goes to the Bodhi tree, and sits beneath it. That's towards the end of the day. So the next one, point 9, is that he defeats the negative forces. Towards the evening, he gets to the Bodhi tree. He puts down the kusha grass mat. He sits on it. From the absolute point of view, from the Mahayana point of view, he is already enlightened, but for the worldly demonstration, which is his life, the bodhisattva view, then he needs to show the attaining of enlightenment. So he sits on that, and in the night, then it says all the negative forces of the world try to prevent him getting enlightened. And so it's like they come in all sorts of ways. Some come scarily, trying to scare him so much that his mind will be troubled with fear and be frightened to attain enlightenment in case these fearful forces destroy him. That doesn't work. They come in a very, very seductive way. But he's done that already. So he's not seduced by all the beautiful sexual hallucinations that come to him, and so on and so on. All of the negative forces' weapons, as they reach the Buddha's aura, turn into flowers. Buddha remains in what we call the Vajra-like samadhi. It's what we're studying in this text is the pure nature of mind. Vajra-like samadhi means you just remain in the natural purity of Buddha mind. And it dealt with all of the onslaught of Mara trying to stop Buddha's enlightenment. That's number 9, overcoming Mara. So let's catch up with our song. It's so deep that your prowess transcended all human expectation, whilst in all of the arts you were always supreme. Oh, so brilliant in each of the sciences you became, the most wise and gifted youth that humans have ever seen. Great is the Buddha to fulfill the dreams of your father and your people. In the city of Kapila you took as your bride King Supa's daughter Yasodhara, princess of the Sakyas, a jewel amongst maidens to stand by your side, tasting life's riches with not the slightest involvement, a perfect prince with all the joys that the world could provide. Great is the Buddha, seeing all that appears in samsara's 3 dimensions as just the sadness of sickness, birth, old age, and death, knowing how worthless is all comfort and royalty, preferring the calm of the forest in its stead, without an instant point of clinging, you mounted Kantaka, and with heartfelt renunciation from the palace you sped. Great is the Buddha. The river Naranjara is cool and slow running. By its banks all majestic ease was cast aside, with rock for a cushion in the utmost simplicity. You practiced absorption of body, speech, and mind, sitting without moving in the shade of a tall tree. For 6 years enduring hardship, the highest truth to find. Great is the Buddha. In the absolute sense, you are always the Buddha, with nothing to purify, from all obscurations free. The perfection and union of all the finest qualities, but to show in the relative the great necessity of developing virtue and wisdom, you went to the noble seat of achievement beneath the Bodhi tree. Great is the Buddha. Being jealous of your power and your all-embracing wisdom, of your matchlessly peaceful, harmonious state, of the way you would lead us to all forms of happiness, the forces of darkness boiled with anger and hate, subduing without malice their nightmarish onslaught. In one instant of your love, all evil was tamed. Great is the Buddha.
Carry on. So, D10 of the 12. So we've had the night, the Mara's onslaught, using all sorts of means to stop the enlightenment. Didn't work. So at dawn the next morning, then the Buddha demonstrates perfect enlightenment. So he was 35 years old then. I didn't mention earlier on at 29 when he left the palace. He left when his first son was born. So however you look at it, he's Buddha, he's a bodhisattva. He's grateful to his parents. Gratitude to parents is a very important thing. And so he knows his father needs an heir, and it's not going to be him. So then, of course, it jumps to the next generation. He produces a son called Rahula. And in fact, Rahula in Sanskrit means obstacle. So it's a funny thing to call your first and only child, obstacle. But anyway, so then you get in the legends, how as soon as he hears the child has been successfully born, he knows he can then leave the palace, and how he wants nevertheless to see his son at least once before going. And he creeps into the room where his wife has the baby, and but somehow you can't really see the baby's face because he's all covered up with his wife. So he takes a deep sigh and he walks out the door. There are lots of versions of the story that make it very real, that he's just become a father, but he leaves all of that and he leaves the wife. Some people get very critical of that. They say Buddha, this is somebody who just can't take the world, can't face it, leaves his wife, leaves his son, leaves his wife without a husband, his son without a father, and psychologically very... I've seen some, I forget where, but people trace it back. He didn't have his real birth mother, he had a stepmother, and all this kind of thing. It's a real kind of criticism. But with the Buddha's clear knowledge, he knows his stepmother is going to become one of the first nuns and bring hundreds of other people with her to take ordination as the first nuns. He knows that his son Rahula is going to become an arhat and will come and be one of his main disciples. So temporarily, to please his father, then he gives him the grandson as compensation, so that when he leaves the palace, he doesn't leave the father completely heartbroken. Well, there's a lot to this story. That's why there's a whole book, of Thomas, and why I sent it to you, because otherwise we just get lost in all the details, and it's very hard to tell what's true, what's not true. So the becoming enlightened is deed 10. Deed 11 is about teaching. Now, it doesn't teach straight away after enlightenment. He spends, depending on which version you read, so many weeks or 7 weeks just in the state of total Vajra mind. And it's the devas, Indra and the other devas, who come and beg him to teach the Dharma on earth. He's setting an example. It's a wonderful example of how what is so profound, the enlightenment that he'd experienced, cannot just be blah, blah, blah taught. It is to show, first of all, how deep it is. How could anyone just understand that? It's not the same as proselytism and rushing out saying, I've got to tell everybody about this. It's to show how deep it is. And then the whole ethic throughout Buddhism, theoretically at least, is that teachers don't go out and teach. All teaching is by request. You ask, then they give the answers. They don't say, "Oi, Ken, come here. I think you need to hear this." They're not going around teaching. It's up to us to request. And if the time is right, if the conditions are right, if what you're asking for is good for you, and so on, in terms of all of that, then they will teach if it's the right thing and the right time and the right person and so on to teach. So Buddha sets an example of the depth of the teaching and the ethics of teaching. So then his mind sweeps the world and sees who can be people who I can train, who will be able to hold
and transmit these teachings. And so there he sees, first of all, the 5 ascetic companions, and he goes to join them. They've wandered off in the meantime from Bodh Gaya to, well, these days is Bodh Gaya to Sarnath. It's quite a journey. It's not that big, but it's not that short either. It's not just the next field or the next forest. He goes towards them, but also he sees, as the first year will go by, he will meet some people who are already teachers in their own right, with many, many disciples. So in the first year, his Sangha grows to many thousands, and he sees those, and then he goes out to teach. So the teaching of the Dharma is point 11. So then from the age of 35 to 80, for 45 years, he teaches the Dharma. He turns the 3 wheels of Dharma, his teachings in 3 main phases: basic teachings, Mahayana teachings, then the 3rd phase that we're studying here, Buddha nature teachings. And that's point 11. The last point is his passing into parinirvana. Nirvana means literally going beyond suffering, or his enlightenment at the age of 35. Parinirvana means going beyond. So to put it briefly, at 35, he has destroyed all the causes of suffering in his stream of consciousness. He still carries results from past karma, otherwise he couldn't have a body and stay alive. Our body is alive because of karma. So between 35 and 80, all of result karma for rebirth has to be finished. So not only does he live out his life, but a few things happen. There are a couple of assassination attempts. He falls ill at the end of his life. All of that is the ending of the last bits of karma that are left to be purified. So parinirvana means both the causes and the results of suffering that have made the stream of consciousness for countless eons, time beyond reckoning, are all finished. There's nothing left. So although we say it's like a drop of water going back into the ocean, it's even more than that. There is just no more personal story. There's only the timeless, pure nature of mind. For Buddha, but then for some 5,000 years after his time, there will be Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya manifestation. These are the results of his promises as a bodhisattva, his connection with people, and so on and so on. So the passing into nirvana, deed 12, is to show how we need to practice. Being with Buddha, in our case, being with a Vajrayana guru, for many of us, there is so much blessing and presence. And there's somebody there you can go and ask questions to. There's somebody there who can tell you the next step in your meditation. There's this source of light and truth, and it's so incredible. So when Buddha, even Buddha with his beautiful body and so on, leaves this world, dies in our term, then how much more so us? And it's to make the point that all he's been doing in the 45 years of teaching is showing us what to do. He's not like the idea of a God who saves you. We have to save ourselves. The point of the Buddha is to be a teacher who teaches us how to save ourselves.
And the whole point of having a teacher is to learn. As I often say, your teacher is not a teacher if you don't learn. He's somebody in your life going blah, blah, blah. If you don't listen, if you don't apply it and practice it, if you've not learned, then that person isn't a teacher. It's by definition. If you've not learned, what have they taught? So what the Buddha teaches is how we need to work on ourselves. So when the Buddha did pass into nirvana, he made it very clear, after my passing, your teacher is the Dharma. It's the teachings I've given. There won't be somebody who will take it further. There will be, he appointed a head of the Sangha, Mahakashyapa, but then Mahakashyapa wasn't to be doing anything more, anything new. He said, when I am gone, the teachings are your guru. It's a very, very important point. And it's the whole point of Buddha manifesting on earth. These 12 deeds of the Buddha are to establish the teachings. And it's for us to learn from them and to apply them to ourselves. So today we've run out of time. We've managed to do the 12 deeds of the Buddha for the sake of completion. I don't know if the music's driving you mad, but we're going to finish the 12 deeds.
On the full moon of Vesak, beneath the tree at Bodh Gaya, the very heart of our planet, of all places holiest, in the splendor of the sunrise of that glorious morning, the ultimate of everything you saw just as it is. Through your perfect awakening and total realization, you became the peerless guide for all that lives. Great is the Buddha in the natural wild beauty of the forests near Benares, and in other worldly places, worldly beings heard you preach the path you had traveled, 84,000 dharmas, whilst in exceptional places the gifted heard you teach the extraordinary truth of the transcendent meaning. Thus you revealed to mankind the profound path of peace. Great is the Buddha, though far beyond any notion of staying or going, to clarify the wrong views of those who believed in the eternal or in nothing. You passed from the sight of humans whose good fortune to see you had ceased, laying your right side to the earth of Kushinara. You dissolved into the vastness of universal peace. Great is the Buddha, May whatever virtue was created by this session contribute to the state of omniscience being attained. By the main enemy, our mind's defilements, being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every sentient being become freed from the ocean of existence, troubled by the waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen. In those in whom it has arisen, may its development know no setbacks. May it increase ever more and more. Through our virtue, may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. Okay, so hello and welcome to those I missed at the beginning, and it's your turn now to make comments or to ask questions.
Thank you, Ken. That was really good, and I think you've done a great job with the tune along with the words as well. That was powerful. Thank you.
It's on YouTube if you want it. If you do a search, Ken Holmes, khenpoken, 12 Deeds, you should find it. It's in my channel somewhere.
Right, thank you.
Ken?
Yes, hi, Yael. Yeah.
Hi. First, this song is just amazing, really. Thank you very, very much. So inspiring.
Oh, good. I mean, it was Taisuttupa's idea. He had fun doing this. I mean,
I'm
he
sure.
wanted to do it. He was keen on the idea. He'd heard people's complaints of why is everything in Tibetan, why we're sitting there saying words we can't understand. Can't we have something in English? And so he was quite precise when he told me the ideas. I want to say this, in each verse. The ideas are his, and then he said, can you, put this into some form of verse poetry? So I don't know how you put those kind of lyrics, because the actual ideas are his, but the words are mine. And then the tune for that one, he left that to myself and Katya to find a tune. So there was that original tune. For some other of the things he did there, it was in the early 1980s, he had a tune. So for like Maitreya, homage to Maitreya, homage to Manjusri, he sang the tune or hummed the tune, and then just wrote it down in music. But I mean, all credit and thanks to him. And it's only because we'd made the tune in the first place, so I felt free to change it, and because people reacted to it, the original tune, they weren't comfortable with it. I did this one in 2016. I'd do it differently again now, but I don't have the time or the resources.
Scottish music is my favorite, so it all came together for me. The lyrics and the tune.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful summary.
And what I was thinking, hearing also your teaching today and the song and everything, it's like how His Holiness Karmapa in all his lifetimes personifies the same the same route, the same way. Even with the little things that leaving his parents with all kinds of things to make their life easier, and even I'm sure through his blessing, his brother, a small child, Tulku, because they had a lot of difficulty to have a male child that they wanted until he arrived. So he knew that by leaving them, he has to live like, behind him, he has to leave a male Tulku. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
And being sick and all the other, maras that he encountered and still does. It gives me a context. Now I understand it better. And the amazing thing is that he does his way towards complete Buddhahood by helping others, by teaching, by helping, by blessing, like he's using his own development to help everyone. This great compassion of his soul. Sorry, I'm a bit emotional, but this is...
That's wonderful. And of course, in the relative world, the predictions are that he is the sixth, he will be the sixth Buddha of our age. So now, I mean, in this time of studying our own Supreme Nirmanakaya Shakyamuni, if we're inspired by that, now's the time to make deep prayers. When Karmapa becomes the sixth Buddha, Buddha Simha, then I want to be there.
Yeah.
I'm going to be there.
I'm going to be
sure. Really, really and truly, to witness being the entourage of the Buddha. And I mean, when we go in the Mahayana version of the Buddha's story and in the details, it's quite surprising for Siddhartha's disciples that all of a sudden a whole load of beings turn up. And, they're learning. Buddha's teaching them Four Noble Truths. He's teaching them how to do shamatha, how to do meditation, all these kind of things. And then Pratyeka Buddhas turn up, Bodhisattvas turn up. And these are like so accomplished. It's sort of, who are these guys? I think it must have made a lot of jealous people too. Because
if he's according to the Mahayana, he was always a Buddha. So
yeah,
the same people, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose the same people, with him from life to life. So they all came to become Buddhas too.
So I'll see you there, but we won't look like this. I don't know what we'll be like. But, by that time, we might even remember this time. And we have a good laugh.
And Simcha in Hebrew language is joy.
Joy, oh yeah.
So thank you.
Welcome.
Could I just ask you, Ken, about the images in that the song? The images are absolutely beautiful, among the best that I think I've seen. The variation of them, they're lovely.
I got them online, some of them. In the meantime, I think in Samiling, in the various tonkas that are on the wall, or not drawings, there are the 12 deeds. And there is a very famous temple somewhere, I forget the name of it, Thailand or Burma, that has these type of images for the various stages of the Buddha's life.
Yeah, I'm not putting down don't get me wrong, I'm not putting down the tonkas, because I think they are absolutely beautiful too.
They are, yeah.
But it's nice to sort of to see other, like a bit of variation as well, so it's lovely. So
it is. And yeah, I mean, there's a whole, in the first centuries after Buddha, they didn't represent him at all in paintings, statues, because it, how can you say, it was a, I think these days we'd use a spirit, you know, like you talk about the great, people talk about the great spirit passing or doing something. There was this spirit, there was this wave of awakening that just like a wave went through India. So for centuries after the Buddha, they only represented the Buddha by a footprint or by a flower or by the wheel of Dharma. They never represented Buddha's body. And the first images, they came, so the very first images we have come from caves like the Ajanta caves. But they're images not of Buddha, but of Buddha as a bodhisattva on his way to becoming Buddha. Even there, they don't, so you get lots of carved statues in the wall or images that look like we will call Buddha, but they're actually of the bodhisattva on his way to becoming Buddha. And the first depictions of Buddha came from Swat Valley, Pakistan area with the Hellenic, the Greek influence. And that's why Buddha statues, the earliest ones, were based on the Hellenic style. And actually Buddha was based on one of the Greek kings who had fantastic artists who wanted, you know, to make the king more beautiful than he was, basically, to make him ideal. And so then that caught on. And then mysteriously various texts appeared under the name of sutras saying the Buddha then allowed his body to be reproduced. First of all, nobody, when they looked at the Buddha, could ever see the proportions. They were too overwhelmed by the presence, but they could look at his reflection in a lake and measure that to get the proportions that make these. So then various artistic traditions emerged, and they tended to suit the people, you know. There was from Swat Valley, it went into Nepal, Himalayan kingdoms, and they had their own type of art. So sometimes Buddha gets a bit kind of skinnier and more pointed. And then in India, you get a different form. Once he goes to China, then you get the Buddha looking very Chinese in form. But what I like is at the beginning, Buddha just wasn't depicted. And then, well, I mean, what my teachers have told me, that amongst Buddha statues or thongkas, there's about 1 in 1,000 that really is like Buddha when you meet Buddha in Pure Lands in very clear meditation. And when you see those, you just stop in your tracks, because there's something so, that's it. You know? And all the others, they're not quite it. Sometimes they really aren't it. Sometimes yes, but when there is an image, it just feels, it sets your flesh on edge, because it's like Buddha is, as experienced in a very pure mind, you know, then those images.
Wow, thanks, Ken. Thanks very much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the history of art's really fascinating, like the evolution of stupas from just being a mound, you know, that we have in Europe, burial mounds, to then putting an umbrella on top, to then developing that, and in the end it becomes pagodas by the time it gets to China and Japan. Okay, maybe we're finished for today.
I just have one suggestion, Ken. that you could consider whether or not you would, for want of a better word, promote or mention the video, the YouTube of the 12 deeds on your Facebook page.
Yeah, I can put the link. Yeah, it's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I publish the YouTube, I've got 2 Facebook pages. I've got the me page, and I've got the Ken Holmes Teachings page where I put the YouTube link every week. I'll put it on the Teachings page. I mean, musically, what I played today, I don't like the sound of. Right? It says I use synthetic means, and it's too electronic, vocoder type sounding. If I was going to do it, I might use that melody, but with a choir. I'd need a choir of proper singers, and each one singing their parts. Then I'd be happy promoting that. I did that because I didn't have a choir. I didn't trust my own singing, so I used electronic wizardry to produce that, to correct my off-key singing, and to make the harmonics voices. But I love music too much to promote that. No. But I will put the link on the teachings site.
Whatever you do, please keep the tune. The
tunes, the melody can be, that works.
The melody, yeah.
And it avoids the churchy sound.
Yeah. No, not only that, it's so beautiful. I love Scotland. So.
Okay, so have a lovely week.
Thank you, Ken. That was really beautiful and powerful. Very moving. Thank you.
Bye-bye now. And take good care. See you next week, all being well.
Cheers, Ken. Bye-bye. Take care.